I understand. My head was facing down. It will be done. Above me, the group of giants furrowed their brows and snarled. Brutal beasts. More weapons, they shouted again. I knew my part. It was all a game. All creatures had this idea about where they fit into the world, where their piece of the puzzle slid in, but it was all only theater, and none were better actors than me. I'll make sure you get the weapons. My voice was weak and feeble, just like they expected. I'll be sure of it. Don't worry. They trudged out of the stone building, shaking the ground as they left. Beside me, I heard a familiar demon cackle. They'll smash you soon enough, worm. It was the call of my slave master. More theater. I was a helpless whelp that the demons used as a tool. Math and logistics were below them, so they let a mere human slave take care of that. No problem, right? More customers, screeched the awful beast. My work was constant. The demons dealt with weapons and tools for death, and business was always booming, out with one monstrosity looking to cause mayhem and in with another. On and on it went. They think that they're breaking my back with this labor? Fine. They don't understand what they're actually doing. Beasts. It was an orc. Why were all other creatures so awful with language? Okay. Games, games, games. I play them better than anyone else. What kind, my lord? His eyebrows raised. He loved that word. Big ones, bad ones. Kill puny humans. All right, I said, pretending to write things down. 20 war elephants and a fire drake, all for 60% of your loot. 60%? I knew he wouldn't understand. That was the point, but the spider must weave his web. Yes, don't worry, I said, pitching my voice to the perfect tone and pulling my slyest smile. We have people who will manage that for you. You'll get your beasts of war. You're a sharp one, he remarked, and that was the first truthful thing he had said. When the gates closed and the demons moved me back to my decrepit cell, that's when I could finally stop acting. That's when I went from a performer to a director. You see, I don't think anyone understands. They think that I'm just an accountant, just a slave to be used for their infinite greed and bloodshed. But they couldn't be more wrong. No, every day I watch mankind put under the whip from a different master. Every day I see us stomped and defiled, and every day I rage because of it. I work for demons, this is true, but have you ever wondered about the devil? See, hell is a complicated place, and I don't think that the devil just slouches on his throne of bones. No, he is nothing like the demons. The devil is calculated and precise. The devil never lets a single ember burn without his knowledge of it. These demons believe they have chained a human to do their bidding, but in truth, they have awakened their own devil. In this world full of war and bloodshed, not a single drop is spilled without my finger touching the coin that paid for it. Not a single mercenary is paid for without my say. Not a single war is waged without me working out the line of coin. These demons never realized that they handed me the keys to their brutal kingdom. Yes, this world is chaos, all of it orchestrated and controlled by demons. But now it is time for the devil to make his move. For too long have humans been subject to the will of other species. My tendrils have been planted and the fuse has been set. Humanity will be freed. They will be freed, because this evil world has only ever experienced the flames. They've only ever felt the heat of the fire. Well, it's time to meet the furnace that breathes the inferno. The accountant has come, and your payment is due. You look handsome when you're thinking. She was sucking in from a thin roll of tobacco. Even in such an ugly place. My eyes were looking out of the iron-barred window. I was only half paying attention to her. I don't think that a slave's chambers are supposed to be very enticing. Not the slave. I turned back to look at her. Her lightly golden skin reflected the faint moonlight that reached my chambers. She was undeniably beautiful, like all of the divine. Have we not finished here? She smiled, listlessly flicking her tobacco onto the ground. Yes, but I so enjoy your company. Please, I disliked her sarcasm. We both have better things to be doing. Now, Mr. Accountant. Nicknames. Why must everyone give me nicknames? I believe most humans would die for the chance to converse with a divine like me. I scoffed. Do not flatter yourself. You are a lesser immortal, nothing like those gods and their golden thrones. She arched her head and laughed loudly, her long black hair falling back. Ah, you are not like other humans. I tensed up. You should leave. Oh, come now, do not be so tart. She hopped off my desk and walked over to me. The other divines are oh so interested in your plans. I cannot return with nothing. I bit my tongue. I disliked the notion of others knowing of my plot, but I had to remember to play my part. If I wished to free mankind from foreign domination, I needed her. I shook my head. Why do you all take such an interest in me? Why, Darren, you are one of our favorite topics. A mere human threatening to throw the mortals into chaos. How brilliant. Chaos is a byproduct, I snapped back. Freeing humanity is what I seek. Same thing, dear. She laid a playful hand on my shoulder. Come, do tell me more of your plan now. She was entertaining, this was true, but she was a divine. They usually separated themselves from mortals, allowing the giants, orcs, humans, and all manner of creatures to fight for supremacy. I was merely a show to her. I could not forget that. Victory, I said tartly. I intend to burn the things that do not know they can burn. Yes, I know that part. I shook my head. No one truly knows. If only she knew how accurate those words were. Then help me truly understand. She was sarcastic, but her interest was genuine. Divines craved good drama. She wouldn't leave until I gave her something. I'm nearly ready. Oh, there we are. She bounded over excitedly, rushing to my shabby bed to sit and listen. Please, do continue, handsome. I have one more matter to attend to before I begin pulling the strings of my web. I paused for a moment, considering the consequences of what I was about to say. The elves. I could see the emotions playing across her face. Excitement, suspense, curiosity, a whirlpool of reactions. She knew as well as I did what that meant. Why the elves? She tapped a finger against her golden chin. They would never use demon arms, let alone spare a single coin for such a thing. They have not yet, but I have a plan. And that plan is, I offered a feigned smile, gazing at her listlessly. Another time, Nara. She frowned and stood with a grumpy posture. You know, sleeping with you isn't a requirement for this kind of information. We divine have many methods for learning about you mortals. I gave a simple nod. I'm sure. Yes, Nara. You believe I revealed those details to you because I needed you to return. But you too are as ignorant as the giants. You will go back and discuss this event with the other divines. And which race is closest to the divines? The elves? They would never accept a proposal from the demons. That much is clear. However, what if they heard from reliable sources that the demons were offering a trade because a certain human of interest convinced them to? A human the divines themselves were observing closely. I suspect they will welcome me with open arms, and the demons will be unaware. It is all a chessboard. Everyone plays it, even the divines. Well, everyone except the humans, and I believe I am beginning to understand why. The greatest error those demons ever made was allowing me to manage their affairs. Fortunately for them, I required demons for my long-term plans. Regardless, all in good time. Tomorrow I must don my mask of subservience once more, and pretend I am not the one pulling the strings. And when I finally ensnare the elves' coin in my web, it is then that I can bring this entire world to its knees. Skinwalkers can change bodies, fooling others into thinking they are something else. Divines and other gifted creatures can use magic, channeling powers unknown to outsiders. Even orcs are skilled in combat. All of them believe they are unique for those qualities. All of them believe they are special. They are not. I am. As I approached the demon master, I hunched my shoulders and kept my eyes low to the ground. I changed, becoming what they wanted to see, what they expected to see. A meeting with the elves? He shouted in rabid confusion. What stupidity! I used my own incantations, summoning powers the demons did not understand. But Lord, my calculations, they say that it's possible. They'll have to listen to accept our proposal. My calculations. I can see the demon's eyes turn. A magic beyond his comprehension, confusing his violence-filled mind. He will act the part of being angry. That is acceptable. He can be anything he wishes. For all that matters is that I win my battle. Fought not on a battlefield, but in the minds and souls of anything that stands in my way. You see, countless creatures possess various special abilities, but I alone can utilize them all. Before the sun had even set, I was in a cart heading east towards the elf lands, something that would have been considered impossible by those who came before. "You're on a short leash, worm," my demon master shouted at me from across the cart. "Just because you're not chained doesn't mean you don't belong to us." They decided not to restrain me for this mission. I was provided with fine wool clothing and other new amenities, all so that the elves would take me more seriously. My idea, of course. "I comprehend, master." Our carriage was being pulled by a large, powerful war beast, its skin a deep red much like the demons, and with great arching horns. The demons were always so proud of their ability to craft unsightly things. I could tell they were all perplexed. When the hawk carrying the elves' reply arrived earlier in the day, they had expected a flat refusal. Instead, the elves requested me specifically. The demons were unsure what to make of this. All they knew was that somehow I had become a valuable commodity, and demons are oh so greedy. "We're close," the driver called down to us. I gazed out and saw the towering white spires of an elf stronghold. Its architecture was wondrous and complex, something the demons sorely lacked. The convoy grew restless. Demons rarely conversed with elves, and they never left their red strongholds without an army. But this was a diplomatic mission, and they had been instructed to arrive with only one cart. Unsurprisingly, gold mattered more to the hellspawn than pride. Our greeting was ceremonious. The elves blew their great horns and nodded in the most diplomatic of ways. All for show, as always. An elf approached our stopped carriage, tall like all of his kind, with perfectly pale white skin. Their faces were long and serious, in the most captivating of ways. Some say they are closely related to the divine. I care not either way. His voice was as smooth as silk. "Welcome to Fort Harmony." "We're here for payment," my slave master barked out. "Not for show." "Of course, High Priest Arlon awaits inside to converse with your associate." A wave of shock hit the convoy. High Priest Arlon? There were only 5 high priests in the entire elf dominion, and they were the second in command for their prized kingdom. Even I was stunned. "Do not remain so still," the elf said, noticing the shock. "This is the first time demons and elves have met civilly in over 500 years. Of course, a high priest would be here." Naturally, I was the only one who knew that was false. I was escorted to an ornate and domed study. Bookshelves lined the tall walls, and great glass windows fractured the sun's light. It did not take long for the high priest to enter after me. I stood from my chair. "Hello, Your Grace." He was tall, even for an elf, and his white robes were decorated with brilliant purple designs. He walked quickly towards the table, though it honestly seemed more like a glide. Enough with the pretense. He filled himself a cup of wine. "I'm not like those brutes you usually deal with. Do not dare try and treat me as one again." I slowly sank back into my chair, cautious and calculating. I did not expect to encounter a high priest, and I was beginning to think that I was not prepared for this either. "I understand." My words had to be sharp. I could practically feel the aura of power emanating from him. "Speak." He was waiting for me to play the game first. Why? Why did they even send a high priest in the first place? Surely they could not think I was that important. "I'm here with an offer," he scoffed. "If you keep telling me things that I already know, then you can go ahead and leave." "I recently supplied the goblins of the East Hills with some weaponry." I looked at him seriously. "Nasty weaponry. Why does this concern me?" "I also supplied the dwarves of the East Hills with some mercenaries. Both of these parties are aiming these tools at you." The high priest was staring at me. Unlike the demons, though, his expression was impossible to read. "It would be nothing for me to pay the mercenaries to leave and fight the goblins instead. The goblins know that they were with the dwarves. They'd retaliate violently. All of a sudden, the thorns you had in the East Hills choke each other out. You could practically walk in there empty-handed. It'd be all yours. I just need some reassurances of my own, and a small bit of gold to distract the red things." "Reassurances, you say?" he inquired. "Some drastic occurrences are about to transpire in the West. I simply need to know that you all won't be troubled by it." He smiled over the rim of his cup. "You are, as they say." I tilted my head. "I'm sorry?" The high priest took a deep breath. What have they conveyed to you? I'm not following. He scoffed, almost as if he were disgusted. Please, the divines? What have they told you? Are they the ones behind all of this? Then it dawned on me. That's why they had sent a high priest, because the divines were speaking of me. There was something I was unaware of, some undercurrent of activity. Perhaps the elves weren't as close to the divines as I had thought, or perhaps it was even worse than that. The details mattered little. Obviously, my initial plan wouldn't work, so it was time to take a gamble. I may not have known exactly why the elves were so concerned with the divines' opinions, but I only needed to know that it worried them. It was one of the moments I most despise, where I couldn't control the outcome. If I erred, I'd find myself in more peril than I could fathom. Oh, they've said a great many things. I leaned forward on the table, locking eyes with him. I wanted him to see the fire within. I've even heard things about the Pure One. Finally, the high priest's brows lifted. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had heard things about the Pure One, but they didn't pertain to the elves. Not yet, at least. He paused, letting my words sink in. What are you after, human? I leaned back in my chair, taking the time to fill my own glass of wine. It seemed the elves didn't know as much about the divines as I had thought, which meant no one did. They were the world's great mystery, and that obviously troubled the elves. My plan was already evolving in my mind. Oh, I sipped my wine, purposefully letting some of the red liquid linger on my lips. That can come later. I believe we have some reassurances to address. I must handle this flawlessly. I once heard a war orc in my office speak of their love for using fire on the battlefield. He claimed you could simply lay a spark and watch them scream as it consumes them. His companion countered, but sometimes the spark consumes you too. That was the sole instance an orc made me ponder. Thank you for your visit, the elf diplomat said to me, bowing deeply. We are pleased an agreement has been reached. Should I feel the same? I glanced back at the demon carriage awaiting me. It seemed so out of place amidst the white spires of elf engineering. I could see the red creatures anxiously anticipating my return. Finally, faces I could read once more. Yes, I said as two other elves carried a chest to be loaded onto the carriage. We have, my slave master shouted at the carriers. What's that? What's going on? They desperately wished to return to their hot red keeps. Gold, I stated plainly. Their faces froze in amazement. Elf gold being delivered to a demon carriage. They never imagined such a thing possible. And for the first time, they regarded me not as a mere tool they had been using, but as a weapon they did not understand. I walked forward to rejoin my envoy, but halfway across the green grounds, I halted. Something in the corner of my vision had yanked my attention, freezing my breath. Gracious one, my eyes remained fixed on the ground. I did not want to look, but I had to know. What is that out in your field beyond the fort? The elf subtly raised their brow. Humans, sir. My voice was cold. Are they slaves? Of course. Of course, how foolish of me to assume otherwise. I slowly raised my gaze to see them clearly. There were three, chained around the neck and forced to dig a pit just beyond the compound. Behind them, a tall elf held an elegant white whip in their hand, its tip dipped in velvety blood. Only the elves would attempt to make barbarism refined. Memories stirred deep within my mind. The deep scars on my back throbbed. I did not wish to recall, yet I could not help it. A cold lump formed in my throat, and my jaw tensed. This was no uncommon sight, human slaves, but now was different. I had become capable, having worked for years to reach my current position. The time had come for me to take action. I require them, I said quickly. A cautious yet interested voice replied, They're not for sale. I need them, or the deal is off, I responded. I sensed the elf's hesitation. He did not want to return to the high priest and report that I had withdrawn my word. They were, after all, just 3 human slaves. Fine, he said, lazily raising his hand to signal one of the soldiers to fetch them. They're just humans. They were just humans. He cared not for their loss, but for the fact that he was giving them to me. Even with all the show and political theater, the hatred for human blood still filled the air with a horrible stench. Yes, we are, I replied in a cold voice, stepping into the carriage. As the slaves were freed and the chest placed on the cart, the journey back commenced. I sat alone within the cart, my master opting to remain atop the carriage this time. I had begun to unsettle them, as they no longer knew how to manage me. "Come on out," I said, sensing the familiar presence of a divine. Sure enough, a golden figure materialized on the seat across from me. "I don't like being used," Nara expressed with annoyance. Word travels swiftly among the divines. "No one does," I replied, gazing out at the obedient slaves following the cart. "You've done something reckless. I'm aware. I've done what was necessary." I didn't look at her, my head bent over writing on a small piece of paper. She nodded towards it, clearly bothered by my lack of attention. "What's that?" "Insurance." I sealed the letter with my signature red D, signifying my name, the Devil. I handed it to one of the caged wind sprites I always kept in my cart, whispering the destination into its swirling, translucent form before setting it free. I returned my attention to Nara. "You're displeased." She scoffed, tossing her long black hair and crossing her legs. "You think I'll tell you anything about the Pure One?" Were the divines constantly watching me? How had they heard so quickly? I shook my head, responding in an unconcerned tone. "No. High Priest Arlen will summon you soon, and when you have no answers for him, he'll kill you and everything you've worked for." She took a deep breath. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. When the High Priest calls for me, I'll have answers ready." "And how do you plan to do that?" "I'm going to meet the Pure One myself." Nara looked at me with a deep, troubled gaze. She was afraid. I didn't know the divines could feel fear. I did not reply. "This is too much." She shook her head, raising an anxious hand to her forehead. "I cannot remain in your company any longer, no matter the allure. What you're doing is far too perilous and foolish. You'll be dead within the month, and I have no wish to be collateral. I won't die alongside you." "Good. It's best I be alone before I take control of the demon forts." I could not discern the expression on her face. Fear, sympathy, or perhaps both. Regardless, she soon departed, leaving me with the information I desired to hear. "You three," I gestured to the slaves as I exited the carriage, "remain here while I go inside. My associates should be arriving shortly. Inform them to join me within." The three looked on, bewildered and weary from the long journey, still believing themselves to be slaves. I would have to clarify later. Time was of the essence. Already I could see the slave master hurrying into the fort to speak with the sin beast. Demons had all gathered around to witness the event unfold, their twisted, fiendish faces alight with shock. "Do you truly comprehend all that I've accomplished for you all? The kingdom I've built for you all? This fort alone supplies 85% of the Eastern Land's weaponry and mercenaries. All because of me." I could see the confusion on their faces at the mention of numbers. "Oh, for the God's sake!" I shook my head, waltzing around the room as they all watched me. "I've been chained in your basement for years, forced to make deal after deal so that you could fill your pockets. That time is over. This fort belongs to me now, and you all work for me." A nervous laugh rose from the crowd. The sin beast's face twisted with anger. "You worm! I'll smash you where you stand! And then lose the entirety of your wealth because you don't know where a single penny needs to go?" I turned back to face him, replying quickly and confidently. "Oh, you couldn't be more wrong. I am no mere mortal." I let my voice drop almost to a whisper. "I am the devil." "Master!" A demon came dashing into the room, a panicked look on its face. "Guests have arrived." "Guests?" the sin beast said with confusion. "Who dares bother us now?" "They said they were insurance." He looked down at me, worry covering his face for the first time. I smiled back. The true games are about to commence. The rockman walked beside me down the large stone halls, his huge stature and bulbous dimensions more than tripling my own. "Don't worry," I was writing messages on various notes to be sent with wind sprites later in the day. "You don't need to understand." He nodded solemnly. Rockman's mannerisms were strangely proper when compared to their appearance, the only sophisticated thing about their look being the large gemstones in their eyes that represented their rank. Roth Amon had bright purple stones. I stopped my writing to look up at those eyes. "Rothamon, what do you make of this situation?" The creature hesitated. Taking advantage of a Rockman's inability to lie? Trust me, by the time I'm done, there will be plenty of other things I'll have taken advantage of. Don't feel singled out. Roth Amon grunted, his voice sounding like a landslide. Well, the only thing I can say for sure is that there's no turning back. We reached the balcony of the fort. Below us was Roth Amon's entire enclave, around 30 other Rockmen, enough to slay a small army if needed. Beside them were hesitant demons, still trying to acclimate to the presence of other creatures within their precious fort. Demons never trusted anything besides coin. Amidst the chaos of the regime change, 3 figures stood in the middle, confused and worried, wondering when their next beating would come, as they were no longer working. These were the slaves I had freed on my way out of elf lands. I don't want to turn back anyway. Roth Amon put his hands behind his back. What am I to do now? I raised an eyebrow. What makes you think I didn't just order your enclave to silence the demons? The Rockman had easily chained up the sin beast, and after such a display, the rest of the demons obediently listened to my orders. Rockmen were created by powerful wizards thousands of years ago. Strategy is far from foreign to me, so don't underestimate me. I smiled, leaning on the stone rail. Rockmen are different from most other creatures, Roth Amon. You all are the only ones bound by honor. Not by choice. It was true. Whatever magical beings had made them long ago had ensured they were bound by certain laws. I suppose everyone was chained to something. I'm aware, but the rest of the world is bound by things too. Most notably, coin. And power. And power, I said with a nod. My question is still not answered. You're right to assume I'm not done with you all. I hope you can forgive me for pulling you away from those beloved caves of yours. 2 years ago, you alerted us to a goblin horde's plot to trap and destroy our enclave. Without your warning, we would have been lost. By the sacred law of my people, we owe you 10 years of service. I acknowledge this with a light tone. Given that I had armed the goblins, it was the least I could do. Of course, I had also directed the goblins to the location, telling them of ancient Rockman treasures. But I would keep that to myself. The devil required progress, and the reliable nature of Rockman was invaluable. Very well, I continued. Earlier today, I dispatched 20 wind sprites to various forts and armies under my pay or command. That felt strange to say, my command. I've instructed them to free all human slaves and send them here to Fort Greed. The fort could use a new name. These people have been slaves their entire lives, the Rockman observed. As have you, I presume, I replied. The memories flashed briefly, but I had long buried my past. When remaking the world, history was my enemy, not my ally. If these freed slaves are to be of any use in their newfound freedom, they will need to be educated. The Rockman shifted, perhaps surprised. You wish for us to teach them? I smirked, wondering when a Rockman's mind had last been valued over their brawn. Yes, you, the divines, and the elves have endured for eras. I know your kind are more than mere stone with shining eyes. The Rockman's expression, though hard to read, seemed satisfied as he gave a slight nod. As I dispatched my final letter via Windsprite, I said, What can you tell me of the coin of Dios? The Rockman turned to me, visibly surprised. How does a human know of this? That is not an answer, Roth Amon, I replied. He regained his composure with a grunt. It is a powerful artifact, forged from the divine Dios. When heated over a fire, it grants the ability to communicate instantly with whomever one chooses. Of course, I already knew this. Very well. Where is it located? I asked, fixing Roth Amon with a cold stare. The creature recoiled, clearly uncomfortable with the memories this artifact evoked from his people's past. It has not been seen in centuries, he admitted reluctantly. I stepped closer, undaunted by his imposing stature. Listen, Roth Amon. I am not here to abuse you as your former masters did, but I have a mission, one that I will stop at nothing to accomplish. You now serve me, and I must insist. Where is the coin of Dios? Roth Amon's gemstone eyes studied me warily. It is locked away in the northern mountains, guarded by a sacred beast. Excellent, I said, clapping my hands to summon a small winged demon to my side. Azul, gather the local hell riders and all the pit drakes we have. We have a task to attend to. The demon flapped away quickly, and Rothamon regarded me with a sense of shock. Why do you need the coin of Dios? I smirked. Because, Rothamon, armies today are led by a single commander. Wars are fought by one, maybe two separate forces roaming enemy territory until they collide. But with the coin, we can change that. My thoughts raced as I outlined my plan. There was a thrill in laying the spider web, the grand design that no one else could follow. I'm no tactician, Rothamon. The elves have had generals trained for centuries in battle tactics. I can't hope to best them in open combat. But if I have 10 separate armies, all moving like coordinated tentacles, wrapping around my enemies' necks, then it won't matter who's the better general. The elves' land is in the east, isn't it? Rothamon asked. Insurance, Rothamon. Everyone needs to be prepared when things go wrong. I gave his rocky shoulder a pat. Just make sure the humans who arrive while I'm gone learn the basics of being free. Those words filled my heart. People would finally know freedom. He shook his head. You don't understand. The coin is guarded by a sacred beast. I hope so. I need to do something to catch the Pure One's attention. I looked up at the sun. I'll slay one of your precious pets, you bastard. It would be a strange sight, an army of hell's worst creatures, led by a human. If I wasn't so focused on my goal, I might feel a touch of pride, but pride kills. How far from the mountains? I asked the reddish driver. Not 2 more nights, master, then 10 days of trekking through the mountains. The demon forced the word master out. They were slow learners, but I'd be damned if they didn't learn. Speed it up. That's not fast enough. I didn't ask for feedback. Get the troops moving faster. Speed is the best attribute in combat. We'd better get used to pushing ourselves now. The entities grumbled but obediently turned away and began issuing commands down the chain of command. I settled back on my wooden seat and observed the Scarlet Army crossing the landscape. I sensed numerous eyes upon me. They're all observing me, aren't they? I lifted my gaze towards the sky, my expression unwavering. Have you ever witnessed a human stare back? I did not approach the journey as a vacation, however. My hands were as active as ever, weaving wind sprites with messages destined for distant lands. The eastern nations were greatly perturbed by me, a new nation birthed from the pits of hell and moving with unparalleled speed. They were unsure how to respond to my presence. I found it quite amusing that they believed they could do anything at all. Master, the same crimson fiend barked as we reached the base of the mountains. We have a problem. I moved to the head of the column to investigate the commotion, and sure enough, there was one. A large group that appeared to be villagers, but not just any. Stone walkers. They resembled humans, but their skin was marbled in pale white. All were bald, even the women. A mysterious and ancient race, one I had read about only briefly in the past. I stood before my army of horrors and approached them, not with the regality and confidence of a king, but with the speed and spite of a general who will not be deterred. What is the reason for this gathering? Can you not see that you are obstructing the path of those who do not appreciate being blocked? The glassy beings are a peculiar people. Little is known or documented about them, and no one even knows where they reside besides deep within the mountains. So why are they standing before me, wishing to converse? One of them spoke up, their voice as silky and smooth as the surface of their skin. You come for the spirit. It was not a question. How did they know? You mean the divine beast? Yes. No point in concealing it. It cannot be killed. Everything can be, I said, resisting the urge to gaze at the sun. Spirit is eternal. I shook my head, feeling this was an unproductive use of my time. None of this addresses my question. Why are you obstructing my army? You must move aside or be moved. The demons murmured at the hint of violence. The stone walkers remained unfazed. We seek a promise from you. I knitted my brow. Of what nature? You pursue the demise of that which cannot perish. You will fail. When that occurs, allow us the corpses. I considered this quickly, negotiation being my trade, though this was an unusual request. Why would they need my permission if they believed I was doomed to fail? Of course, I had no objection to them taking the dead, but the reason eluded me. There is no such thing as nonsense, only an unwillingness to delve deeper. What do I stand to gain? The mountains speak. We will silence them while you travel. I shook my head. I do not comprehend what that means. The mountains speak? Suddenly, the group of pale creatures hummed in unison, a single rising and falling note, akin to the toll of a great bell. It somehow evoked the very sound one might imagine a mountain to make. No flatlander would understand. Not a sound you hear. The Urita do not deceive. So that was the name they called themselves. The scholar within me had many more questions. Why did they require the bodies? Was that mountain speak they had just demonstrated? But as I've said, speed is the greatest weapon. The dead are yours, I said with a wave of my hand as they stepped aside and my army marched on. The columns of demons lurched forward, while the stone walkers simply watched, humming that same melancholic tone. Their marble white skin made them appear almost spectral. Perhaps they were mountain spirits come to mislead me. You will fail. No, failure was not an option. The mere mention of that word made my skin crawl. Did these Urita comprehend the depths of torment I had endured to reach this point? Fathom the lengths I've gone to for my plans? How dare they even entertain the notion of my failure when I will be perfection incarnate, the unerring bow, the unstoppable force that shatters the immovable rock? I will slay the divine beast and claim the coin. There it stands, I said, gazing upon the tallest peak in the entire range. A wondrous summit cloaked in a mantle of pristine snow, the mountain that few have ever laid eyes on, and none have ever brought an army to assault. My beasts unloaded wagons of gear and set up a staging camp. The journey was arduous for them. Demons despised the cold, and many of the drakes struggled to navigate the delicate paths. Yet we persevered, for I would have it no other way. As we drew nearer, I began to feel it, as did all the troops. Power. Power so intense it permeated the very wind. Power so potent the rocks seemed to stir with life. Along the route, stones would roll in peculiar ways, up hills and along twisting paths. I recall reading of these dancing stones in scholarly texts. I also detected a constant hum, rumbling in one's heart and filling one's ears, at times nearly deafening. I have no doubt this is what the stonewalkers spoke of, and I wonder how it would have been without their silencing. As we unloaded tents and prepared provisions, everything abruptly ceased. The drakes roared in panic, and the demons shrieked in confused anger. All halted as if struck by an invisible wall of stone. The falling snow froze in the air like stars, and the loose stones scattered away like startled mice. Suddenly, one of my generals cried out, "Master, look!" I hurried over to find a circle of demons gathered around a mysterious figure. Approaching, I beheld a beautiful woman, or at least part of one, golden and translucent, a pristine body like glass. I immediately sensed divinity. "Who are you?" I demanded. In a voice deeper and more powerful than an earthquake, she replied, "Power." I must admit, this was not how I had envisioned our first encounter, but no matter, for I had prepared for such a scenario. "Do you not fear revealing such information?" I inquired of the divine beast, seated across from it in the wooden chairs I had brought out for our meeting. Around us, the demons and drakes stood frozen like statues, with dust hanging in the air like tiny stars. It was simply the beast and I, conversing in a temporal rift. "No," the beast's words were brief. "My true form resides within the mountain before you. I shall slay you there. This makes no difference." It fluttered its hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. I lifted my chin. Fear was not an option, nor was backing down. Even if the demons were afraid, the devil could not be. "And you dwell beside the coin of Dios?" I asked. The beast regarded me with a gaze of transparent beauty, its eyes black as tar and its voice like the rumble of a landslide, slow and rhythmic as the undulations of a mountain range. "Dwell beside, yes. Protect, no," it replied. "The coin is alive?" I pressed. "Of course." The beast's response was succinct. "Do you often greet your future challengers in this manner, with idle chatter?" I said, gesturing to our unusual meeting arrangement. "Sometimes." The beast's eyes never left me, as if peering into my very being. Sometimes not. I nodded, having gathered most of what I needed. The beast was less formidable than I had anticipated. Time to push further. Old One, I rose from my chair and began pacing. You do not hesitate to inform me of what I may expect within. A lion fears nothing of the sheep, the beast responded, unfazed. It knew nothing of true battle, the clash of wits and words. Your power, the aura that emanates from this mountain, is that what the Urita pray to? What they listen to? The creature nodded slowly. You speak of auras. They are as sound to a clap. And you choose whether or not to answer their prayers? The beast replied in its indifferent manner. Yes, sometimes I respond, sometimes I do not. But you can hear them, can't you? It nodded again. All the while I continued my pacing and added more strings to the web. See, real battle plans, the kind that work best, are made only after surveying the battlefield. I had known many things coming into these mountains, including how they were said to speak, but I could only know so much before getting here. Now I had seen what I was going to meet in that mountain, and it was woefully arrogant. It was time to strike first in the incoming battle. Very well, I said, settling back down across from the beast. I suppose I can extend the same courtesy you've shown me. The thing tilted its head. Courtesy? You're letting me know everything about you? I'll offer the same. I leaned onto my knees and stared the thing in its black void-like eyes. I must venture in and take a chance. I loathe it, but if it succeeds, I'm going to take that coin right from under your nose. A silence hit us, like the front of an incoming storm. Together, me and the beast wallowed in the stillness, staring at each other like it was a duel. Then, with a suddenness that even I didn't expect, the thing knitted its mouth and laughed. It was a booming, horrible laugh, but one that probably hadn't been heard in thousands of years. It stood up from its chair, unfreezing time and causing a wave of confusion to unroll from the demons. Never have I been surprised before, it said, looking down at me. But that was quite enjoyable. I will miss you after I squash you. Take that as the best blessing I have ever given. It then simply simmered away, like a rainbow disappearing before the sun. I leaned back into my chair, letting the clamor of demon confusion fill the air. It had worked. I couldn't help but sneak a smile as I thought about the interaction. The lion doesn't fear the sheep, but even it should watch for the snake. We stood before the giant stone doors that led to the inner chamber. They were ornately decorated and gorgeous. I couldn't care less about the art. Murmurs and snarls began to rise from the ranks behind me. The demons were entering a state of blood rage. Their eyes slowly filled with a deep crimson, and their muscles swelled into a sinewy mass. They were among the world's finest soldiers, though that would matter little today. They were my bet on a gamble. Open the doors, I commanded, preparing to test my first prediction. Two massive pit drakes strained against the chains attached to the door, slowly revealing a vast, dark chamber, as if the entire mountain peak had been hollowed out. I would have wondered at the structure's support, but I already knew the answer. Power. Then it struck us, erupting from the darkness like a volcanic blast. The change in the air rushed towards us, like a net cast over us. It washed over us, screaming into our ears, pure, deafening, and raw. This was the opening salvo of an epic confrontation. The beast silenced us, mouths moving, but no sound reaching our ears, its aura pummeling us. But I was not to be deterred. I signaled to one of the leading demons, and the purple march flag was raised just as we had practiced. The troops surged into the room, spreading into a wide arc, ready to face whatever lurked in the darkness. Flags flew up and down from the various commanders, their complex movements outpacing even the speed of horn and voice commands. Demons may be slow in many ways, but in war, they learn faster than any other creature. I remained behind them all, intently focused on something special. To my growing unease, I sensed nothing yet. Shame indeed, a booming voice echoed, and all dropped to their knees, even the drakes squirming like small rock lizards. I was hoping for something more creative, and then it appeared towering over us, a monstrous entity beyond any living thing I had ever seen. It roared, sending the front line of armored spearmen flying backwards and opening large cracks in the ground, separating most ranks with large chasms. Then, with speed, I thought impossible for something so large, it charged in a large looping arc, approaching the right columns and with a bloodthirsty grin upon its feline mouth. It seemed intent on crashing through all the troops in one fell swoop, ending the battle before it began. Luckily, demons are no slouches with combat. They deftly began moving to make way for the incoming monstrosity, raising their fiendish crossbows and sending volleys of fiery bolts at the charger. Normal creatures would flee, but demons during a blood rage fear only losing. "Closer!" was the flag I showed to my honor guard of armored swordsmen. They didn't need to know my plan, they simply nodded, letting those large ram-like horns on their heads dip slightly. Behind them, ultimate chaos ensued. The beast had summoned an array of spears and swords, and was using them with giant sweeping motions to mow down troops. The bolts from my army, of course, were doing almost nothing. "This isn't going to last long. I need to hurry." "Faster!" I signaled as we took off behind the action. We were trying to sweep alongside of everything and go unnoticed. The lion never expects the snake. "Come on," I was saying to myself, even though I couldn't hear it. "Come on!" I was listening intently, doing what I was sure no one else had ever done. Instead of fleeing from the deafening noise that was flying into our ears, I leaned into it. I listened closely, tensing my jaw and squeezing my fists in pain, but I could only hear the best. "Losing," the large center flag read. Time was running out. No matter how hard the demons fought or how little they were scared, the thing was still nigh invincible. It would keep raging until only corpses for the Urita remained. It had to be here. I couldn't be wrong. Suddenly, I felt a hasty tap on my shoulder. I looked over to see one of the guardsmen pointing towards the divine beast, who was now staring right at us. Damn, he'd been tracking us, hadn't he? We had to move quickly. I raced past the waiting demons, my guards dutifully following. As I charged deeper into the chasm, from behind I could hear the thunderous approach of the beast, its massive hooves closing in. Listen, where was it? The beast was gaining on us. Nothing could slow it down, no matter the size of my drakes and demons. It knew that if it killed me, the demons would cease as well. It was almost upon me, its many arms wielding large axes and spears ready to strike. Amidst the beast's deafening roar, I heard something different. A faint humming sound, almost unnoticeable. But I was always attentive. "You!" I cried out to the sound. "Listen to me!" The beast was now less than 200 yards away, closing in fast. "You!" I shouted louder. "Listen!" What was this familiar sound? "That's it. I ask you to listen to me." A ghostly voice, like the murmur of a winding creek, responded. "Me? You are asking me?" No time for introductions. The beast was almost upon me. The coin must be somewhere in the mountain, and it needed to be heated to be used. The beast had revealed more than it knew. No one had ever tried talking to the coin before. It was merely a tool, a cog that hummed dumbly and was locked away. But it had to be me. Only I could understand what the coin was saying. It sounded familiar because I knew its language. It no longer wanted to be told or commanded. It wanted to be asked. 50 yards, now or never. "Coin, may I talk to someone?" Talk. That is what I do. The beast was raising his spears above me, my guards already charging into his feet only to be trampled. "May I speak with the Pure One?" I uttered. Came the response. A spear descended towards me, but just before it could slay me, everything froze, and a sensation far worse than the beast's aura took its place. I had thought the beast's presence was oppressive, but I had never known this kind of suffocating dread. I was surrounded, though I knew not by what or where, but it was an inferno, like standing in a fire, yet with skin that refused to burn and grant the relief of death. The very air weighed me down, crumbling me onto my knees, my bones feeling as if they were turning to dust and decay. After enough time, my vision cleared from its blurred, burning state and started to morph into an image. It was a battlefield before me, chaos and death with a giant creature looming above. This was my battle, but it was frozen. All that existed was me and the Pure One. "You're quicker than they say," the voice spoke, like a symphony of hundreds of voices, though not as deep. instead carrying a tone that commanded the very air to enter your ears in an orderly, obedient line. "Speak," it demanded. I strained to raise my neck to meet its face under the pressure, teeth gritting and expression twisted. "I have offer." There was no laugh, no emotion. When I finally brought my head high enough to see it, I was met by skin that seemed to be a moving river of shimmering gold, brilliant and bright. Its armor was light and decorative, likely because protection was useless to a divine like it. This wasn't the type of being that feared harm. Its face was like the perfect image of a man, though I knew the Pure One claimed no human gender, for it existed before anything like that. It was cut sharp and had features that jutted out like precise mountains, arms and legs that screamed power and ability. Yes, that was it. Everything about the being screamed undeniable and unmatchable power. "No being can provide me with anything." The reply was firm and steady, like the beat of a drum. "A deal," I groaned. "You're occupying my time." Finally, I rose to my feet, trembling under an unbelievable weight. I wanted to meet its gaze, even if it would burn through me. "Elves?" There was a pause, enough to nearly make me collapse again. But as it ended, so did the relentless pressure of its aura. My lungs refilled without hindrance, and my shoulders could finally fall naturally. I seemed to have passed the initial test. I was certain of that, and one other thing. It could not read my mind, for if it could, I would be reduced to ashes. "Speak. Allow me to live, and I will rid you of the elves." No words, just that awful stoic stare from the divine of divines. "I have a plan. They have human slaves. I will free them all and collapse their empire at the same time." Mistake. If I wished the elves dead, I would simply snap my fingers. That is not true. Its eyes widened slightly, and I could feel my skin beginning to burn again. Suddenly, the room felt as if it was shrinking, and the walls shook with great force. "You doubt my power? You doubt my ability?" It was an angry, ferocious tone, like a meteor shower filled with fury and destruction. "I have leveled mountain ranges and birthed oceans. I have crafted stars only to consume them when they have matured. You know nothing of my capability." "Oh, but I know far more than you think." "Only you," he remarked, his gaze briefly sweeping across my demonic entourage. "It's just me and the coin. To shatter the chains, I first had to follow their bindings. I refused to lose by wallowing in their muck and bloodshed. The demons were doomed the moment they joined me on this mountain, a fate I had long accepted. You are different from other worm people. I am no mortal man. Years of toil and strife, of planning and submitting to the yoke of the demonic kind. I was once the demon's accountant, and in a way always would be. But now, before the entity that created these very mountains, they would know my true self. I am the devil incarnate." The Pure One's perfect features curled into a small smile, a soft chuckle echoing off the frozen chamber walls. "Yes, we shall see how the devil fares against angels. Fail me, and I'll crush you and every human you think you've freed." Then I was plummeting, tumbling through the air alongside the rain, only to land with a splat, face up in a muddy puddle. I rose, dusting myself off as I surveyed the familiar surroundings. It was dark and raining, but unmistakable. I stood just outside the Bastion of Greed. I waved down the approaching scout demons, the small winged things that filled the midnight sky, and watched for invaders. After they brought me a cloak as instructed, I saw Roth Amon trotting out towards me, the mountainous thing leaving divots in the ground as he walked. "What of the army?" he said with that strangely perfect grammar. I held up the coin, letting its small hum and brilliance answer for me. Somehow the Pure One had placed it in my pocket when he sent me away. "Many mages. I can't believe it." "We have much work to do, Roth Amon. I hope you've been educating the slaves. We're going to need them." He shook off his shock. "You haven't been gone long, but we Rockmen have a way with teaching." "I know," I replied. "So what happened?" I couldn't help but smile. "God has made a deal with the devil," she said. "She's one of the best," Rothamon's voice echoed across the open courtyard of the Bastion of Greed, a recent addition at my request. "Flying through all of our tests." I studied the woman, whose bald head and piercing eyes made her appear more like a Rockman than a human. But her wit was what mattered. "What's your name?" I asked her. "I don't have one," she replied. "We called her the Hawk," Rothamon continued, "because the other rockmen thought her movements and eyes resembled a perched bird of prey." "Good nickname," I said. "I want a name." "Ariana," she said quickly. "I want my name to be Ariana." By now the place had changed from a smoldering shadow of hell into one of the grand wonders of the world. Demons, goblins, sprites, and beasts of labor all moved in and out of the area like it was the source of all wealth. Coin flowed from my banks like rivers of clinking yellow, but power and notoriety flowed back in to fill its gaps. By now the demons were used to the commotion of success and watched over their new budding empire like proud parents. Of course, Bastion of Greed wouldn't do as a name for what was now turning into a real and prosperous city. As tents began turning into huts and huts into stone houses, the new citizens began searching for a real name for home. Naturally, only one name made sense for a city run by the devil. Hell, and business was booming in hell. I felt compelled to make a statement. That is the issue. It matters little. We now have several cities pledging allegiance to me, freeing all of their slaves in the process. We have carved out a decent position at the table, and now we must begin planning the rest. Ariana shifted on her feet at the mention of slaves. I could tell that she did not understand why she was in the room with us, and likely did not fully comprehend what was transpiring. I was rapidly changing the world, and when such transitions occur, it is usually to the burden of the chained, not the benefit. "Ariana," I said, "you wonder why you are here." No answer. "You are here because you will lead one of my armies into battle." She stared at me with wide eyes. Rothamon was quite surprised as well, but he was starting to grow accustomed to such surprises. Mankind has been nothing but a hammer for other nations, our spirit being crushed like a bug for their pleasure, but no longer. I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in every human who has been brought here. You do not believe that you are capable of anything beyond menial labor. The wide eyes shifted into a deep glare, and Roth Amon backed up slightly to give us space. "That is why you are here. A Rockman has called you capable, a title they are quite reserved about granting. You will show that I am not the only human who is capable. You will demonstrate to the other humans and to the world the kind of hell that can be unleashed when more than one human opens their eyes and breathes in the fire." "Can we start with the giants?" I smiled, and from the corner of my eye, I could see the same expression arise from Rothamon's rocky face. "I would love to start with the giants. I want more wheels." It had been 2 weeks since I had assigned Ariana an army of her own. She had her own rockmen to assist her, but seemingly did not need it, for she was a natural. "Put the industry demons to work, making more carts for me. I require speed." Me and Rothamon were watching from a balcony above. My army would be prepared after she had left, for hell was truly turning into a bustling city, and space at the center was running low. "I will need more trained people by the time we return." "It shall be done. It is also time we establish some rules for the city." "Very well. I desire the Rockmen not working on education to begin making their way as judges and lawmakers, and we will gradually shift this to humans as they become more capable. Demons not engaged in warfare can be utilized as enforcers, and I am certain they would be eager to punish some criminals." I took a deep breath, savoring the subtle moments of satisfaction that come with a long-term plan unfolding before one's eyes. Hell is filled with demons and miscreants, but it is not without order. The devil cannot tolerate such foolishness. It will be carried out. And Roth Amon, I fixed him with a steady gaze, ensuring this point was driven home. "The first law is to prohibit any form of slavery, human or otherwise." He nodded blankly, but I was beginning to discern the nuances of Rockman expressions. "A remarkably benevolent policy for one known as the devil. Do not be misled. I am doing all of this for the sake of justice." I turned my attention back to the balcony, where a burgeoning army of demons and war machines was beginning to take shape. But in a world as troubled as this, only one who is willing to wield evil alongside them can enact change, and I do not merely intend to alter a few things. I shall burn the entire system to the ground. The elf approached, a condescending smile on his face, as if I were a child. Let the elves be the first to recognize your great nation. The area of travelers and demons was silent, everyone staring at them. Such gall, such ridiculous arrogance. I felt like a mere plaything to him. Please. The elf extended the box to me. Take this as a coronation gift. The box was held up before me, but behind it and behind the smug elf presenting it were 4 humans with collared necks, the personal slaves of the diplomat, brought in to make a statement right in front of my eyes. A slap for all to see, and a slap for me to feel and enrage with. I refused the box, glaring at the elf with intense hatred. Human slaves were once a common sight, but now it was something I would not stand, especially in my own borders. Before I could speak, Roth Amon came rushing in. I nodded, suppressing my emotions. But it doesn't make sense, Roth Amon. I predicted animosity from the elves that would quickly escalate into warfare. Why the feigned diplomacy? That's your department, and the paperwork is waiting for a response, Roth Amon replied. The elves have been in power for millennia, so I should have anticipated such calculated moves. Roth Amon was right. They're probing me, testing the waters. That's why they're here. Why are you smiling? Roth Amon asked cautiously. I hadn't even realized it, but the truth was taking shape before me. This was unwise of the elves, Roth Amon. Why is that? They have the greater military force, but what matters more to them is their air of superiority. That's why I expected some minor skirmishes before an all-out assault, so they could maintain a sophisticated civil position and still deal with me. They're all fools, but they didn't, Roth Amon. Instead, they're right here, doing exactly as you said, prodding at me. What was that? The character inquired. Yes, we shall address this blunder, the other responded. Okay, now let's slow down. Diplomat, I exclaimed, turning around and greeting the elf with a welcoming smile. This will be a challenging endeavor. My voice was as sharp as the purple gems of Rothamon's eyes. After that, though, the details in between are up to you. Your Rockman aft shelf will be an invaluable aid for travel and knowledge, but the true sharpness must come from you. I understand. I don't merely want understanding. I want complete and absolute awareness. I want you to anticipate 10 steps ahead and then some. I want you to read the mind of every single foot soldier on the opposing field, if that's what's required. I want a level of commitment and cleverness that you think is impossible. You're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for the future of the chained, the broken. Is that clear? Crystal, leave. I will contact you tomorrow with the day's instructions. Your route may change at any moment, so stay nimble. She gave a firm nod and departed, beginning the slow and arduous process of moving an army. Inspirational, Rothamon remarked as we watched her go. I'm the puppeteer, I said, rubbing my temples as the first demons began to stir, the weight of my plans pressing upon me more than the Pure One's aura. I don't need someone to plan the moves with me. I simply require someone who can listen and still fight if the strings are severed. She may be too aggressive. The giants have obviously not been kind to her. Humans have known little kindness, but I agree, she could cause problems if she fails to keep her composure. Rest assured, I am mindful of that. We returned to the Bastion of Greed, where Varus awaited us in the central chamber, his slaves obediently behind him with eyes downcast. What news from the west? I asked, my most devious smile in place. I am to remain here as your ambassador, your grace. I clapped my hands lightly, signaling for the large demons to approach Varus's slaves and begin breaking their chains. Slavery is outlawed in hell. I cannot maintain special privileges for anyone. Varus's confusion and anger were sweeter than honey to me. And why not? Hell is blind to privilege, Varus, I said, patting his tall shoulder as Rothamon and I departed. That is, for everyone except the devil himself. Rothamon waited until we were out of earshot to speak. You seem to take great pleasure in that. You're damn right I did. I wiped my hand off on my pant leg. What purpose does that serve? Everyone knows we're marching to war with the giants. I will soon depart with my army to assist Ariana in the field, and I intend to bring Varus with me. I'll toy with him there. The elves are incredibly clever, and they hardly forget things, being as old as they are. That being said, the coin of Dios was famously the least important of the 10 divine creations, so as far as I can tell, it has disappeared from elf records. They don't know I possess it. I suspect one of the main reasons Varys showed up was to determine why I disappeared into the mountains in the first place. You intend to leverage this? I nodded. It's a bit of a gamble. The elves have the largest collection of libraries and histories in the world, so one of those books could very well contain the previous whereabouts of the coin. I only knew that the Rockmen would know because your creators were obsessed with such devices. Rothamon nodded, only grimacing slightly at the mention of his old leaders. What makes you confident the elves don't know already? I smiled. Varys is already earning his keep. In the short time he's been here, he has asked a multitude of inquiring questions to various demons and people about the mountain mission. He's been discreet with his questions, but I don't think he understands just how many birds I have listening to this place. It also just doesn't matter all too much. I'm the only survivor of the trip, which is all he could get out of anyone. The elven deities could inform them. No, I'm sure the Pure One has kept our meeting quite secretive, along with the coin. I suspect he's very much looking forward to how this will play out, and I don't intend on disappointing. My voice was steady and precise as I laid out the current state of things. The world is quickly becoming a stage for our future clash with the elves. Anyone with eyes can see how destructive and immense it will be. Everything before that is simply preparation. Rothamon contemplated the words in silence until we entered the next chamber. The Bastion of Greed had been undergoing significant changes of late. I had ordered armies of construction dwarves to add and remove parts of the keep, gradually transforming it from a place of torture to one of governance. I was also having them construct stone roads in and around the city, as well as other necessary infrastructure projects. I didn't intend to deceive myself about what was happening to Hell. It was going to keep growing until it rivaled an elf city, and I wanted those arrogant beanstalks to know that even their city planning could be challenged. Greetings, I said to the bald man standing behind a wooden desk as we entered a large side chamber. His skin was dark and his stature was enormously broad, but he couldn't conceal his true attribute from me. I could tell from his dark brown eyes that the man possessed immense intellect. This man has proven to be incredibly well-read, and he has scored almost perfect on all of our intellect tests. Rothamon's smooth voice echoed through the newly constructed domed room. We Rockmen have been calling him the Owl because of his wisdom and large brown eyes. I sense a trend in these nicknames, Rothamon. We Rockmen also hold birds in high regard. Their aviation skills are to be admired. I've never given them much thought, I replied, turning my attention back to the silent man. I want a real name, as I know you weren't afforded that courtesy. Choose one now. After a moment of stoic silence, he spoke up with a strong, deep voice. I've been called Alistair by some who cared to ask. I nodded. Alistair the Owl, fitting. Please, let's sit. Alistair and I sat across from each other, while Rothamon chose to remain standing. I imagine Rockmen were all too accustomed to breaking chairs under their enormous weight. All right, Alistair, how did you become so educated? Where were you before Hell? This interview was of great importance, which is why I insisted on attending to it personally. I had once been beholden to the snow fairies of the distant north, serving as their bookkeeper and one of their lore masters. When your freedom edict was proclaimed, the fairies sent me with a small contingent to observe and report back. We were in the city center when the announcement was made, and the fairies were powerless to prevent my immediate release by the demon guards. Yet I chose to remain. Most slaves would have simply followed their masters out of the city and willingly rebound themselves, knowing nothing beyond the lash and fearing freedom. Knowledge had freed my mind long ago, I replied, my voice carrying the weight of one who has plumbed the depths of his own being. Freeing the body was but a simple matter thereafter. The powerful figure leaned back, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth, mirrored by the Rockman, Rothamon. Good, he said, leaning forward once more and resting his elbows on the desk. I have a role in mind for you here in Hell, one that requires capable leadership. The fairies are experts in edicts and laws, as I imagine you're aware. If you're amenable, I offer you the position of governing my city immediately. I opened my mouth to respond, but he raised a hand to silence me. One more thing, he said. leaning in closer and fixing me with a penetrating gaze. Do not think I am unaware of the potential for this to be a spy position for the fairies. Those creatures are clever, and I have no intention of ever letting you out of my sight. If I so much as catch a whiff of dissent, I'll have you flayed and your skin sent back to them. My crystal. Fantastic, I exclaimed, clapping my hands and rising to my feet. Your new rockman, Mon Shelf, should arrive shortly to brief you and get you started. I won't overwhelm you all at once. The gracious rockmen have been doing a commendable job before your arrival, so we'll gradually introduce your responsibilities. This room will be your new administrative office. Learn quickly, as this city is growing faster than a young goblin, and I don't want a single stone out of place. After that, Rothamon and I briskly departed, heading down to my office at the bottom of the fort. The same room the demons used to force me into when I was their simple accountant. I still use this room, so I never forget, forever remembering every scar on my body and mind, no matter the cost. That is what drives me. I can see the concern on your face, Rothamon observed. Of course I'm worried. Events are unfolding faster than I anticipated. I'm having to take more risks than I initially intended. As dull-witted as the giants are, they've caught wind of my planned attack rather quickly. I had to move Ariana out sooner than I wanted if I'm to still catch their defenses off guard, which means I too must depart earlier. This would leave the rockmen overworked if I couldn't find a governor. Why not use the coin and govern that way? He suggested. I shook my head. No, I intend to use it as sparingly as possible. Its anonymity is just as valuable as its powers right now. I'll maintain that advantage for as long as I can with the coming wars. Multiple wars? Rothamon emphasized. Let's not delude ourselves, Rothamon. We're currently viewed as the villains of the world. I predict some sort of grand coalition will soon form, most likely instigated by the elves. That's why I want to eliminate as many players as I can before they understand what's happening and band together. I paused in the hallway, turning to face him directly. We have only two weapons right now, speed and knowledge. Fortunately for us, those happen to be the yin and yang of warfare. Regarding the divines, I knitted my brow. Your questions are growing rather bold, Rothamon, and your planning is becoming rather bold. I have always been this way. Do not worry. Rothamon shook his head as we entered my chambers. You have not answered my question. I sat behind my desk with an exhausted huff, mentally preparing myself for what I was sure would be dozens of messages to send out. I have no intention of overlooking the elves. My voice was serious as I picked up my pen and began my rounds. We must stay focused. You still cannot expect me to believe that you have not thought about this event. I took another deep breath. Very well. You wish to pry? The divine creations. I have been spending most of my late nights gathering sources and reading, so when the time comes, you and I will sit down and dive. No. What? I will not assist in that endeavor. I was stunned, which was a relatively rare emotion for me. Roth Amon, I would prefer not to compel you, but must I remind you of your oath? It does not apply here. I felt anger grow inside of me, like a fire crawling up from my chest and into my voice. And why is that? I said while standing up. The rock was silent. My voice was as sharp and cold as a blade. Roth Amon. I simply cannot. I couldn't stand it, the thought of this being the thing I didn't predict. A rebellious rockman. Seriously? I worked for years on my plan, almost everything working as I'd expected, and this is what catches me off guard. This is what's going to have to make me rework my plans. No living soul knows more of the divine creations than the rockman. That was half my reason for getting them. Leave me, I said with a harsh voice. You refuse to stay true to your oath. So be it. Working alone is no stranger to me. I will not have my plans squandered by a rebellious pebble. The rockman obviously hesitated, but then obediently bowed out of the room, leaving me to my lonesome. I wanted to seethe on the betrayal I felt. I wanted to dig deep onto why such an obedient race would suddenly rebel from orders, but I didn't have the time. One by one, all things would topple under the will of the devil. Right now, that had to be the giants. Other things would be dealt with accordingly. As I began my first letter of the day, I felt it. It had been a long time since I had previously experienced this, but my senses have been anything but dull. Very well, I said, setting down my pen and leaning back. Come out, Nara. I know you're here. There she was, just as I remembered. Golden, standing tall with her perfect black hair and a body that only the divine could have blessed. She stared at me from the doorway, her expression unlike any I had seen from her before. It was not the familiar glare of idle want and playful lust, but rather one akin to worry, or perhaps fear. I've become quite accustomed to seeing both of those looks recently. I've been wondering when you'd return. Is that so? She sounded offended, an edge in her voice. Am I bound to your master plan as well? Were you simply waiting for another cog to turn? I leaned back, scratching my chin. It has been a long time, Nara. She let out an exhausted huff and threw up her arms. What in the stars have you been doing? That was a ridiculous question, and I disliked having to state the obvious. Don't act as if you don't know. I cannot waste time right now. I've just dealt with a rebellious rockman, which may be the first time in history such a sentence has been uttered. I have 2 armies preparing for war with giants, and on top of that, I can practically feel the cold elf blade trying to find its way to my neck. So please, Nara, don't ask questions you already know the answers to. She began slowly walking across the room, circling my old desk as if it had suddenly become something new. What was once the symbol of my servitude was now the seat of something much different. It made sense. When she had left, I was still a slave, a random human grasping at the air, striving to forge something from nothing. Many had done that before, and she was only interested in me because I seemed more spirited than the rest. Now I was the catalyst of a quickly changing world. The first domino in what everyone could see was going to be a complete free-for-all. Even if I were to be assassinated tomorrow, the steps I've put into motion couldn't possibly be reversed. The elves are unsettled by a chill they've never experienced from the divines. I'm sure the Pure One is ready to ensure they receive no aid from him when I eventually strike. The giants are amassing a force to fight me, and if they win, they'll try to take every city I've already liberated, which the northern snow fairies are also eyeing. Every goblin with working eyes is looking at the mobilizing forces and licking their lips at the undefended cities they'll leave behind. Humans, for the first time in recorded history, are both free and getting educated. The world is about to enter a new era, and it's going to be coming out of the other end covered in blood. Things have changed, Nara. Let's get down to business. She shook her head. Business? Do you believe that's the reason for my return? I leaned forward and opened one of my notebooks, readying my pen beside it. What exactly have you heard from the other, lesser divines? She backed up with a disgusted face. What in the stars would make you think I'd help you at all? I said no more stupid questions. I flipped my pen around in my fingers while looking at her. You didn't have to come back, but you did. You can't believe I'm still alive, let alone doing all of this. So now you want to hedge your bets. My victory remained an improbable outcome, impossible to most. But a dice rolling 6 enough times in a row can make even the most logical person start sweating the next bets. What are you talking about? Stop with the lies, Nara. I'll let her think this was all her brilliant idea. She may believe I've misjudged the situation in an arrogant manner, but I don't care. I only want to end up on top when it's all over. If you give me information and I end up failing anyways, you'll never be known. I've been dealing with whistleblowers for decades while accounting, and not one has ever been caught. You obviously know that. It's a simple win-win for you. Quit thinking that I can't see that, and let's get to work. She took a silent moment to look at her feet, which is all I needed to know that yet another hook had been set, proceeding to the next step. There's more people incoming than we can handle, Alistair said, trying to keep up beside me while going over his work. The last week I've had no time for anything besides readying the army, which meant that the city had been all up to him and the Rockman. Granted, that's why I made the position for him, but obviously, when they were out of ideas, only I was the answer. Crime is going through the roof as homelessness and chaos runs through the outer city. The problem is quickly reaching dramatic and unsustainable rates. He shrugged his arms in a helpless gesture. No city can keep up with this sort of pace, Your Grace. I could tell there was some intellectual defeat in his voice. He felt like he was failing, which he was. I drew a deep breath as we walked. The fort had become unbelievably busy and the halls were packed with diplomats, architects, engineers, and citizens, all going about their busy days. We could barely get through as we headed towards Roth Amon and the awaiting army. "All right, fine," I said with obvious annoyance. "Is it a labor or money problem?" "What do you mean?" I was trying to make this a learning moment and not lose my cool at the same time. "You obviously know what it takes to fix this. You're far from dumb. I assume the issue is either insufficient funds or a lack of available workers. Don't tell me something is impossible. Tell me what's wrong, and I'll decide what's possible or not in hell." Alistair was silent for a moment, his dark brown eyes reflecting his internal contemplation. "Labor," he replied. "Splendid," I said, directing two demons to go and fetch the elf diplomat. "I want you to go to the city outskirts and offer every incoming human refugee a job constructing their own homes. We'll pay them wages, and the rest of the rockmen can halt their palace duties to help organize the newcomers. We'll teach them valuable skills, keep them out of crime, give them their first paychecks, and solve the housing problem in one swift move." Alistair let out a rare smile, indicating the clarity of the solution. "It's brilliant," he acknowledged. "No, it's your damn responsibility, so don't mess it up." We reached the army staging grounds that contained my second force. They all looked ready to head out and help Ariana, or more specifically, they looked ready to kill. It was a more diverse group than usual, led by demons but supplemented with dwarven and southern wood elf mercenaries, the latter often dismissed as wood goblins by the high elves, though their archery skills are unmatched. "Alistair," I said before relieving him, "you heard whose delegation is arriving next week?" "The snow fairies," he replied matter-of-factly, which irked me. I had hoped for a more enthusiastic response. "Correct, and you must entertain them. I'm uncertain of their plans, but we both know a future confrontation is inevitable." I paused amidst the chaos to look at him. "Are you prepared for that? Do you doubt my loyalty?" "Yes, I question even my own reflection's loyalty, but that's irrelevant. I've already made arrangements for the possibility of your betrayal. You'd be nothing more than a thorn. I'm asking if you're personally up to the task." "Of course." "Excellent," I patted his shoulder. "Now please return to work. I believe you have a new labor policy to draft." Alistair disappeared into the crowd, just as Varys appeared, looking as wretched as ever. I had no desire to deal with him, but there was no rest for the wicked. "You summoned me, Your Grace." I could tell that last part still vexed him, which I relished. "Varys, as you can see, I'm amassing an army. I want you to join us on the march." "Your Grace," he nodded, "I would be honored." I made my way to Roth Amon, who was ensuring our logistics wouldn't falter after leaving the city. Tensions had been high since he'd refused to assist me with the divine artifacts, but our work remained productive. He knew his oath, and I'd be damned if I let anything impede my progress. That said, our disagreement pointed to a hidden weapon, something I was missing. I despise not knowing. Status? Some hiccups, but nothing that would prevent our immediate departure. "Excellent. Did you send the letter I instructed?" "Of course." "The response?" "They'll be there." I took a deep breath and nodded. Ariana was preparing for her first battle, against angry giants. I would leave the city with the rest of the forces to aid her. Alistair must keep the city from drowning and deal with his former slavers, without betraying me or losing his temper. Varys accompanies me, seeking any opportunity to sabotage or uncover my secret weapon. And Rothamon, the one I trust most, refuses to assist with the only thing I truly need help with. Yet I will prevail. Even with every eye in the heavens watching, hoping for my downfall, I will not fail. I'd sooner let my entire army perish than allow my plans to crumble. No one comprehends the depth of my machinations, nor my willingness to let this world burn, that it may be reborn from its ashes. Very well, let us depart.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.